contrary of that, and you can see it. He was still in the hospital. He still hadn't started his therapy. He was in the acute phase. And this doctor knew, he should have known that it hadn't been decided whether he needed to be on the ventilator. But he did know that give it a little time, and then that decision might be different. I say again, what was the rush? There was nothing happening in the next week or 2 weeks that would have prevented this decision from being made when there was a better prognosis about the ventilation, when it was a little more removed from the acute injury. Nothing. And this is the one that strikes me as particularly difficult. Right underneath where it says breathing, right? You see the highlighting that ends in breathing on the summary paragraph. He does not exhibit, and let me move this over just a little bit. He does not exhibit the capacity to express his own wishes to make medical decisions. That's what he says on the 28th of July in 2009. The same day that he understands that medical literature in this acute phase suggests waiting a little bit before you make these decisions. The very next day, he's apparently surprised to find that Mr. Lawler is talkative and appropriate today, with his trach cuff deflated, which is what he was, which was the ventilation system. He's able to talk. He's clear. He appears to be comfortable. The word appropriate is important. Okay. So what does he think? What does this doctor think? He says, well, gee, I guess yesterday the seeming lack of being able to, right here, the seeming lack of following command may have been some form of frustration, that's frustration at being in the acute phase, or delirium with the acute change. This is the same man that says, I know the literature, and I know the literature says during that acute phase, that might be a bit premature. And on that day, does he ask for a psychological consult? Does he say, oh, all of a sudden, because you're talkative today, you're beyond that frustration and depression you might have been feeling on the 28th? He doesn't take the time for a consult. He doesn't take the time for a psychological consult. He doesn't take the time to go find out from the treating doctor whether he's right or wrong about this to a reasonable degree of medical certainty. He says, okay, everybody on the same page? We're going to take you off the ventilator tonight. And again, number 2. You see number 2 there. The pulmonologists believe that he will not be able to breathe on his own well enough to sustain his own life. That is not in the records. What's in the records are continued improvement, a period off the ventilator, and then problems with the secretion and aspirations, which nobody denies can't be resolved. And yet that's what he's told on the 29th, one day out from apparently suffering some delirium and frustration or depression at the acute change. Again, what was the rush? He could have, this decision was something that didn't have to be made on that day. This decision, they're asking him to make a knowing, intelligent decision. And in order to be able to do that, you need accurate and full facts, and you need to be able to, and the person asking you needs to be able to be sure that you're not making it out of some temporary frustration or disappointment or depression. And yet none of those things happened here, and that's why I say he did not make a knowing decision to disconnect himself from this ventilation. And again, all you have to do is look at Dr. Dean's testimony, look at Dr. Arden's testimony. There's no dispute about it. The immediate, and as Dr. Arden expressed it, the proximate cause of Mr. Lawler's death was the removal from that ventilation system. And I say that at least make that decision knowing intelligent. At least make that a real decision. If he made that decision, then we have a different discussion to make. He did not make that decision because he did not have the facts, and you don't have to believe me. All you have to do is look at the record. Exhibit I shows the incidents during the month of how he was improving. He was getting more feeling back in his arms. He was being able to, they were talking about physical therapy so that he'd be able to use his arms and his hands. No question about the fact that he was seriously injured. And there's no question about the fact that regardless of how much he improved, he suffered a serious injury. And that's why I say there's no question that it's a felonious assault. And you heard what Lieutenant Johnson said about that. It's one serious felony. But it did not rise to the level of murder because he was taken off that system far too early. He was taken off that system without being given the opportunity to make a knowing and intelligent choice. And his decision when he's being told, oh, beyond any medical certainty, to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, you're never going to be able to live off this ventilator. Apparently, if you look at these, that there's no hope for improvement. But if you look at what the doctors that are treating him are charting, he's improving on a number of levels. His neuro deficits are improving. His breathing's improving. The difficulty about going back on the ventilator was because of the secretions, which is a treatable thing that can be worked on so that you don't need the ventilator anymore.
You have 15 minutes.
Thank you, Your Honor. As I said, the one thing I want you to remember is that you don't have to rely on me for these issues. They're right there in the records. Not only those 3 exhibits, but the exhibits that show the doctor's chart notes, and the exhibits that there's not a single pulmonologist, nor was a single pulmonologist called to suggest that it was certain, or even to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, or even probably, that he would have to remain on that system. I don't know what the rush was. I don't know why they didn't, but what they did is become an independent intervening cause in the proximate cause of Mr. Lowther's death. It's a felonious assault. It should be a felonious assault. And I'm going to tell you again, because of that injury, there is nothing but sorrow for what Mr. Lowther had to go through. He didn't deserve it. Jonathan knows that. I know that. But the reason that he died was because he was taken off the ventilator without even being able to knowingly consent to it. I want you to listen to the judge's instructions. And when you go back there, I want you to remember that Jonathan is not trying to avoid responsibility. And I've talked to you about how he was hesitant and, played a minor role in the robbery. We're not saying that to excuse you. Jonathan, you led a perfect life, and his mother's here. You were no criminal record. You led the kind of life that other mothers said, we want my sons to hang out with you. The first guy at Ravenna to be on the football team and in the band, where he had to run in at halftime and take his shoulder pads off. He made a mistake that night, and he's going to pay for it, and he knows it, and he's telling you that. But I want you to do your duty. I want you to rise up above what the emotion is in this case and take a look at those records. And I think when you do, and you look at that evidence back there, there's no question that that the proximate cause of the death is the removal from the ventilation when it wasn't unknowing consent. That doesn't excuse the fact that Mr. Lowther got hurt. That doesn't excuse the fact that he can be charged with felonious assault. And that doesn't excuse the fact that I'm saying that we know you're going to find him guilty of participating in the robbery. But I think the evidence is clear, and I ask you again to take a look at the records and find Jonathan not guilty of the murder. Thank you very much.